Hi, everyone. We're just giving people a minute or two to come into the room, and then we'll get started. Okay. Bonjour, hello. My name is Tim Stanley, and I am Professor Emeritus in the Faculty of Education and the Institute of Indigenous Research and Studies from the University of Ottawa. And I have the honor of being your host for today and would like to welcome you to this event. I'm going to say a few words in French. Bonjour toutes et tous. La présentation d'aujourd'hui sera en anglais. Mais pour avoir accès à la traduction simultanée en français, veuillez cliquer sur le bouton CC en bas de votre écran. Vous pouvez également afficher vos questions ou commentaires en appuyant sur le bouton Q&A aussi. Après la présentation de notre conférencière, je partagerai avec elle le plus grand nombre possible de vos questions et commentaires. Hello, everyone. Today's presentation is in English, but you can access the simultaneous translation in French by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. You can also post your comments and questions by clicking on the Q&A button as well. After the presentation of our speaker, I'll share with her as many of your questions and comments as possible. We begin with the University of Ottawa's Indigenous Affirmation. We pay respect to the Algonquin people who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. We acknowledge their traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and we honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future. Today's session is the 9th in a series of 12 presentations that make up the Bâtir des liens, mobiliser les histoires autochtones pour le changement social, Building Connections, Mobilizing Indigenous Histories for Social Change project. This project seeks to identify promising practices to support the efforts of Indigenous communities to collect, preserve, and mobilize their oral and written histories. It also seeks to advance the efforts of both Indigenous and settler K-12 schools and post-secondary institutions to incorporate these histories into their history education programs without recolonizing Indigenous peoples and their meanings. This series is supported with funding from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, the Institute of Indigenous Research and Studies, and the Faculties of Education and of Arts of the University of Ottawa. This series is organized in collaboration with the Faire l'Histoire Making History Educational Research Unit of the Faculty of Education, and also with the Histoire au Canada, Perspective des Premiers Peuples, History in Canada, First Peoples Perspectives project, which was initiated by the Cégep de l'Outaouais and the Kitigan-Zibi Anishinaabeg First Nation Cultural Education Center. This latter project has been developed with the support of the Kiona Institute, the Avatak Cultural Institute, the University of Ottawa's Canada Research Chair in Indigenous Intellectual Traditions and Self-Determination, Production Manitou Incorporated, the Council of the Atikamekw Nation, and the Museo da Pessoa, or the Museum of the People of Sao Paulo, Brazil. The next event in this series will be held on Wednesday, February the 16th. This presentation in French with simultaneous translation in English will focus on the challenges of preparing the Kiskino Hamasowin Atisokana curriculum. The three presenters will be Christian Kuku, Coordinator of Cultural Services at the Atikamekw National Council, David Gascon, Vice Principal of the Nikanik High School, and Dabeken Studnicki Gisberg, Associate Professor of History at McGill University. We will email people who've registered today's event the link to this event as well as be publicizing it on the Faculty of Education website. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, or speakers. Unfortunately, because of an important meeting, our first presenter, Cheryl Recollet, is unable to join us in person today. But she has sent a video in which we will hear her talking about her work. Cheryl Recollet is the director of the research and engagement for the Robson Huron Wawinda Bagewin. She is a member of the Ojibwa Dudum, or the Sandhill Crane clan, Point Grandine, and is highly interested in treaty relations and governance. Her previous roles include Senior Environmental Communication Analyst for the Chiefs of Ontario, Field School Instructor for the Indigenous Environmental Keepers Program, and Director of Sustainable Development for the Wawanapite First Nation. In 2018, she was recognized by Northern Ontario Business as one of the top 40 under 40 young leaders in Northern Ontario. Joining us in person is Nikki Recollet, who is the GIS analyst of the Robson Huron Wawinda Bagewin. She has always had a strong connection to the land that is known as the Wawanapite First Nation, and places the values that her ancestors passed down to her with utmost respect and appreciation for the roles and responsibilities of her spirit and clan, which is also the Ojibwa Dudum. Nikki Recollet contributes to mapping projects and programs and applications. Her other research projects consist of critical ethnography and research with the organization's historians. She is currently working on her Master's of GIS applications with Vancouver Island University. And our presenters will be discussing ways of using modern technologies to revitalize ancient maps and historical knowledge. Their presentation is called Mapping Our Ways, Critical Ethnography for the Robson Huron Wawinda Bagewin. Avant de passer la parole à Nikki, je vous fais rappel que vous pouvez accéder à la traduction simultanée en cliquant sur le bouton CC en bas de vos écrans. So once again, if you want the simultaneous translation in French, press CC, the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Without any further ado, here is Nikki Recollet.
I'm going to go ahead and quickly get into my sharing screen. Okay. So, thanks for the great introduction, Timothy. I'm very happy to be here today. I'll go on to introduce myself a little bit more. So, Ani Bojo Nikki Dijnakaz, Aji Jagdoram, Wanapatebing, Donjaba, Bating Megwa Dida, Nimi Gwech Wendam, Miigwech Wabnang, Ja Wabnang, Ipikishmuk, Minwa Giwedanang. So I'll let you know what I just said. I said hello and I introduced myself. My name is Nikki and I am Crane Clan. I come from Wanapate First Nation, but I live here in the Bawading, so Batchewana territory. I give a great thanks today. I'm very thankful. And as well, I gave thanks to the directions. I work in GIS, so I gave a thanks to the east, the south, and the north, and the west, as they are components in much of the work I do on a daily basis.
Nikki, before you go any further, I apologize. This is the technician. I have a black bar over the top, Robinson Huron, on your presentation. Is it possible to just lift that a little bit?
Is it a closed thing I can do, or?
Sure.
It's the closed captioning. Who can see?
Okay, is it possible to just move that a bit higher? You click and drag.
I just closed it. What if I close it?
Okay,
Am I still working?
It's clear now. Yes. Are you all right with that?
Okay, I'm fine, and I'm muted. I'm good. Or I'm unmuted, and everything's good. Other than that, okay.
Back to you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so Cheryl will come on soon, and I did just introduce myself and as well as the great introductory from Timothy. So I don't need to say much more on that part. So I'll go out and now give my thanks. I'd like to give a chimingwech to the University of Ottawa, to Tim Stanley for making this connection with us and welcoming us to participate in the Building Connections in the Mobilizing Indigenous History for Social Change. And we also wanted to thank all of you who are participating, faculty, students, as we're not sure who's all here, but we do want to give special thanks to our GIMAs, our elders, our youth, our communities that assist in the work that we're doing. And without mentioning our historians, it wouldn't be right. So we definitely want to talk about and give thanks to our historians. We have 3 that we're dealing with right now. There are many others, but Alan Corbière, who is an assistant professor, CRC in Indigenous History of North America at York University. And we also have Heidi Bohacker, associate professor in the Department of History at the University of Toronto. And we're working with Josh Manitowabi, a new historian, working on his dissertation, and he's out of Brock University. So going further, I'm going to just give you a quick overview of our session today. So we're going to go into introducing Wawin Damagewin, our priorities, our projects, the treaty land management that we're doing, and introducing you to our treaty portal. We're going to go through some of the older maps. I don't know how quite ancient they are, but historical and our original surveys. We're going to go through some of our tools that we've created. So Danakiwanan is our place name tools to gather our Anishinaabe names. And we also have our story tool, which is Nado Dabajamowinan, and this is just started, and we are going to be really getting these stories created for our communities. Continuing into that story, we got a chance to do one with the youth journey, a youth journey as well. So we had a couple youth this summer helping us on the building some of these applications. And then we'll go into a little bit of the historical research, and the one I'm part with Alan Corbière in, and doing Nana Bojo place names, which is based on stories, as well as going further into our Anishinaabe place names. But before I go any further, what I would like to do is introduce you to the video of Cheryl. So I am going to switch over really quickly.
Okay, Ani, so miigwech Nikki for that great introduction. As Nikki mentioned, my name is Cheryl Recollet, Dijoner Cause, Point Grandin Donjaba, Weequem Kom de Bendagwas, Wawin Damageo and Nadad Nuki. Donje Nuki. So I just introduced myself in my language. My name is Cheryl Recollet. I come from Point Grandin, and I'm a member of Weequem Kom. I'm happy to be here, and I work for Robinson Huron Wawin Damageo. So I'm the Director of Research and Communications, and here to talk to you a little bit today about our organization, about the work we're doing for the treaty, as well as some of our research projects that we're working on. So we represent 21 First Nation communities in the Robinson Huron Treaty Territory. So our territory extends from roughly, our communities go from Wasauksing to Nipissing all the way to Batchewana, including Manitoulin Island. So those are 21 First Nations, 16 that signed the treaty, as well as 5 treaty beneficiary communities. We at Wawin Damagewin are working towards treaty level governance. So trying to create a foundation, a framework, as well as a house where we can house a lot of the treaty issues. What are some of the treaty interests that we can bring our communities together? And how can we work collectively to move those issues and opportunities forward? So our goal is to develop a collective Anishinaabe decision-making body that progresses the interests and inherent rights of our people. We recognize that the treaty helps protect our inherent rights and can build on the strength of this collective to enhance and foster health and wellness for our people. So we're really here to work with our treaty partners to further our treaty relationship. Our vision, so we established our GIMAs, and we were able to strategize and develop a vision and mission for the work that we need to do. So our vision: the First Nations of Robinson Huron, Wawin Damagewin are healthy, thriving, and self-sufficient communities exercising their inherent rights and jurisdiction in their territory according to Chinoknagewin. Chinoknagewin is our supreme law. Our mission, Our mission of Robinson Huron Wawin Damagaewan is to implement our understanding of Chinook Nagaewan as the Creator bestowed on us to enable Robinson Huron communities to grow, thrive, and be healthy, self-sufficient, and self-determining, exercising our inherent rights and jurisdiction over our governance structures and processes, culture, way of life, and identity, as well as the promotion of community well-being and the protection and use of treaty lands. So here's the model that we developed for treaty governance. As we mentioned previously, they had 4 areas that they wanted to focus on. So that was our governance structures, our culture and way of life, our community well-being, as well as our lands. So treaty lands management, how do we do that? So that's what these 4 sections are. And at the center, we have strong treaty governance. So what are some of our priorities and projects, especially here within our research team and the work we're doing at Robinson Huron Wawin Damagaewan? So some of our priorities, these came right out of our strategic plan. I've been talking a little bit about our strategic plan over the past couple slides. This is also available on our website for download. So feel free to check it out. But these are the areas that we see as treaty interests and that we can come together collectively to work towards. So our governance, how do we make decisions on our treaty lands for our people? How are we supporting our culture, way of life, and our identity as a collective of Anishinaabe of Robinson Huron Treaty? How do we ensure that we're promoting community health and well-being, as well as how are we ensuring we're caring for our land? So some of the ways that we're doing that and some of the areas of focus for our research team include treaty engagement and knowledge sharing, our use and occupancy study, as well as treaty land management. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these. So for treaty engagement and knowledge sharing, we've been creating a lot of products that are available on our website for download. And there's also hard copies available in our offices, or you may see some around in some of our communities. But we have a transcript of the original treaty document. So I know it's sometimes hard to find the treaty, but you can read ours. It's all here. And we've also translated it into Anishinaabe from our elder Rita Corbier. And we've also included in there our Anishinaabe understanding of the treaty when we signed it. So we can start to share, the perspective of this treaty relationship that we had agreed upon. The second product that we promote or that we've created is our treaty history calendar. So in this slide, we have our old calendar, September 2020 to December 2021. And that's because we're just working on our new calendar. We're a little bit late. It's at the printer as we speak. So we're waiting for it to get here, and we'll be delivering it to all of our 21 communities. And as soon as we get it, we'll be uploading it to the website for print and download. And you're going to want to check that one out because it is our Wampum Belt calendar. So honoring their Wampum Belt relationships and sharing a lot of knowledge about those wampums that depict our treaty relationships since we began these. And then finally, we've developed this activity book for our school-age kids. There's a lot of different activities in there, coloring pages, word search, crosswords, that will help engage some of our students to learn more about Robinson Huron Treaty. And we have printed 50,000 copies of these and have delivered them to schools across our treaty lands. So I encourage you guys to check that out. If you're teachers or students or parents and you want a copy, you can also download it on our website. And if your school hasn't received a copy and you're within Robinson Huron Treaty lands, please contact myself and we'll be sure to get you guys some. Another tool that we use to engage our communities and our treaty partners is our magazine. So we've now done 2 issues of our magazine, Iwin Damagajig, the Robinson Huron Treaty Times. So we had our Ziguan issue, Ziguan Nipin Spring Summer issue that was released in May 2021, which features Rita Corbier on the cover. Rita's the one who did the translation of the treaty that I just spoke about. And then our Dog Walk-In Fall or Biboon Winter issue was released November 2021. And it features Brandon Patatagoose on the cover from Atikamek Shing, one of our communities. And he's talking a lot about cultural revitalization. So these are also available on our website if you want to learn more about us and the work that we're doing. I encourage you to download them, check them out. There is still a few hard copies kicking around, so if you're in any of our communities, be on the lookout for those, or reach out to us and we can make sure we get you a copy. Since I am the Director of Research and Communications, we are doing a lot of research. And one thing that's been taking up a lot of our research time is this use and occupancy research. So we've been working with Terry Tobias to develop a really strong research methodology for a regional use and occupancy study of our whole territory, including our whole 21 communities. And phase one of that is going to start off with the first 9. So first 9 communities from Wasauksing, all the way to Nipissing, all the way to Atikmikshing. That'll be cover half of our treaty territory. And as you see here in the slide, this is what a map of use and occupancy looks like. So this is a map from Sagamuk's use and occupancy study that they did in 2013. So they're really the anchor of our program here, and they're really the showcase that we're using to share with our communities to get them excited to want to participate. So I think in Sagamuk they interviewed 300 members, and this is one of the maps of all of their members put together. So it's called the Hodgepodge map, and it includes all the sites that their members are using within their territory, and that's 23,000 sites of cultural significance within this area above the North Shore. So we want to see these kind of maps across our whole territory for all of our communities. Hence why it's so important to develop a strong research methodology. And the pictures here, you can see our research design workshops in our communities. So we've gone to each community. We spent a day with their harvesters and with their land users to really talk about those important parameters we want to include in our research. So what type of species are they harvesting? What type of plants are they using? Are we including these in the research methodology framework? So we've traveled all around to our 9 communities, so they've all had a chance to contribute to this. And we've been working on our research methodology for the past 2 years. So now we're really getting ready to get into a strong data collection blitz. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the very short term. As I mentioned, Sagamuk is, the foundation to our research, since they've done a lot of this already. We're using them to showcase their project. And here we're going to hear from Angus Toulouse, who is on council at Sagamuk, Anishinaabeg, and he's also the CEO of North Shore Tribal Council, where Robinson Huron is housed. So let's hear from Angus for a few minutes, talking about the importance of the work that they've done in Sagamuk.
Bonjour, de noe magna dek gigda on dek any and digo chechake and dodem skama kanishnabe kingeni and donji. Good day, everyone. I introduced myself in the Anishinaabe name as Talking Crow from Sagamuk Anishinaabe and of the Crane clan. I'm going to talk today about the Sagamuk experience that we had in the use and occupancy mapping exercise. Quite some time ago, there was an interest from the Council of Sagamuk to start mapping where people were utilizing for harvesting, fishing, hunting, especially in our northern area. We were very interested in wanting to look at a resort, but at the same time wanting to know the activity of our community members in our traditional area that's always been there from our history. The area that we're covering was always utilized by our trappers. Our grandmothers, our grandfathers have always trapped in the area. And that was the initial trade that was there with the Hudson's Bay Company. And so we had, each family had an understanding and knew where their territory was. That was always there. And at the end of the day, the community, by extension, had an understanding as to what their whole territory was and what they needed to protect and what they needed to manage at the same time. And we thought we could do a paper exercise, but what we found out was in order to utilize this kind of information in this day and age, there was a certain methodology that was needed to collect this data, to collect this information, to show that we're still utilizing the land and the territory like we've always done. So we undertook to find out who can do this kind of work, and we found Tobias and Associates was the group that can carry us, and they demonstrated the kind of methodology that they used to ensure that this could stand up anywhere in the court of law if need be, by saying this is how we've always used the land, this is what we continue to use the land for, and the waters as well, and the sacred sites that we've always gone to and continue to access and utilize. And the chief at the time and the council at the time said that this is a priority for us. We got to make this thing work. So the focus became that somebody had to champion this thing in terms of finding the individuals that will come forward and sit down with the interview team and map out all of their activity in the treaty territory. Quickly recognizing the challenge, we filled the 100 spots through discussing with known harvesters, by me asking them, who else is out here? Who else is out doing activity? And they talked about the different blueberry pickers, the different medicine pickers. They talked about all the activity they used to do on the islands. And they talked about the need to appreciate who's hunting what, and who's still trapping out there. So they started sharing names with me, and they said, you got to go see this person, and this person. And next thing you know, we had a list of about 140 people. So we had some backups in case some people didn't show up, and that's what we sensed over the period of time that the interview team came back, that we had to have the list for the day. We had to have backups for the day, so that they could be ready to jump in when there was somebody that had an emergency show up, or they forgot they had an appointment. And that was really my chore that I had, was to knock on the doors, to call people, to remind them, are you coming out to your 1 o'clock interview? It's having to take that extra step, that extra effort. And what was really good at the end of it all, after we did get it flowing smoothly, and we were able to collect all the data, and we had a couple of sites as well. We had some urban folks that lived in Sudbury that we made allowance for, and we also had our northern community in Benny and Biscotasing. We had community members living there as well, and we made provisions for them because they were accessing the northern part of the boundary and much more on a regular basis. So yeah, we managed with the social media, and we managed with the old moccasin telegraph kind of approach to things by word of mouth, and it didn't take long to get the interest from the community members. And at the end of it, they each had a map. Each person had all of their activity for their lifetime that they could remember in the whole Crown area, what they've done. And it was impressive to see all the different sites and all the different, I forget how many targets or how many data centers that they each provided. And we had one individual, was an older lady, a grandmother that talked about all of the, and she's a basket weaver and a medicine woman as well. And she talked about, as a youth, all the islands and the waterways as their main highway, and how they traversed and how they occupied and how they still use those all those islands. And she talked about hunting and trapping. And what we found was that she had so much activity in the area that she needed to come back twice. So you're going to have situations where you're going to have a wealth of information where an individual activity may not be captured in one sitting, where you may need to bring that person back for another sitting. And what they, what they really appreciate is taking home at the end of the day their own map that they contributed to in the overall activity of the whole community. So it was a worthwhile experience, and it was a challenge, and what really was a commitment to make sure that people did show up. And that was really the key, because everybody, once they showed up, had no problem sharing their data. Once they knew that nobody was going to go and take their secret site where they knew they were going to get their moose every year. So no, it wasn't intended for that, but they all joked about it, and they really appreciated being able to share their knowledge. So that was the best part. So miigwech, and I hope you do take part and do share your activity within our treaty territory. Miigwech.
So Chimigwech Angus for those great words. I'm happy that he's here sharing with us, and happy that we're able to really, showcase the work that Sagamok's doing, and happy that a lot of our communities are willing to get on board. So lots of times they ask us, why is this use and occupancy research so important, or why is it so significant? Well, first and foremost, it's going to provide us with a baseline inventory of our Anishinaabe use sites. So like we see in Sagamok's map, how much did they have? 23,000 sites. We want those sites all across the territory. And we're going to be interviewing 350 active Anishinaabe land users from across the area. It's a regional approach to treaty land use, as I mentioned. But most importantly is it's the foundational knowledge base to make informed decisions related to protecting our treaty rights. So this is going to be a tool. This is going to be the baseline to support that informed decision making. And of course, it will also be a valuable land use planning tool. So that's a lot about the research that we were doing here at Wawin Damagayawin, or just a small piece of some of the work we're doing. We wanted to focus on the use and occupancy study because it's very much related to our relationship with the land. And through those maps, they clearly show how meaningful our relationship to the land really is. So we're grateful that we're able to, do this research and use GIS and mapping as the medium to display that information and data meaningfully. So Chimigwech for letting me have some time to share with you today about our projects and the work we're doing at Wawin Damagayawin in our research and communications department. Now I'll pass it back over to Nikki to talk about some of our other projects that we're working on. So Chimigwech.
Honey, so I'm back. I hope everyone can hear me well. I apologize, but I'm going to have to just skip through some of these slides. Also, I would have interfered with the video. Okay, so I'm actually going to bring you back to the web browser. That's where all the tools that I've been creating are available. Some of them are public right now. Others are still being revised and created. So I'll bring you quickly back there where it was opened. And this is what happens when you enter our link to our RHW GIS portal. So there's some information in here. It's a disclaimer. It gives information of what is in the portal, what kind of layers are in the portal. Also, a little bit of a caution to when you're using this portal, it is a live portal. So even though you can do a lot in it, when you close it, it won't be saved. So there's a print tool you want to be able to print. This tool is on our website, and this one is publicly available. You have to understand, and then you click on OK to get into the tool. Now, once we're in this tool, we don't have a lot of line information and a lot of stuff like that, features. We just wanted to show a quick little base of where some of the lakes were and where our First Nation communities are. So these are all logos of our First Nation communities. And if you click on one of those logos, it's going to give you information about that community, who the chief is and his term, as well as some of the past chief that signed the treaty in 1850. And so you can click on a link to quickly get to their website and stuff like that. So what I'm going through today is just to give you a demonstration of a tool that we've created. This one shares a lot of ministry government data. There's not much of our data in here yet, but when Cheryl talked about our treaty lands and our management and going into the use and occupancy study, we are going to want to have a tool like this that we can share with our communities and our people as we move forward with that project. But within this tool, you can see what we created as there's a bunch of icons. The first one is the legend that you can quickly open up and see our communities. We have layers, and I'll go through a few of these, but not too many because of our time. And I'm actually going to try to take my time demonstrating it though at the same time. There's a base map icon. So it allows you to change into imagery. If you scroll down, you can change this into the topographic map of Canada. You have access to do all that. I kept it back on the terrain with labels so we can see some of the data that I'm pulling in a little bit more easily. There's slider tools, you can create bookmarks. This is where I was saying that you could draw, you can edit, add labels, but once you do that, if you don't print your map, it's basically, it's more for a tool for them to quickly see something going on near their communities. There's other tools down here. The only ones I'll really get into depth is there's one that is a data and to add spatial data. So you can also add data. We use Esri software. So they have this whole living atlas or ArcGIS online, and you can access layers that are available through there. There's measuring tools as well as the print tool. So, and there's an attribute table down here that you can link up to that will give you all of the features by fields and columns, like Excel table style, showing all of that information that was stored in these tables that you've seen when I click this. So let's go into looking at a couple of the layers that we have available. I'll quickly turn on the Canada Lands administrative boundaries. This is what our surveys records look like right now. But what we're going to go into is some of the original surveys so you can see what they looked at the time of the 1850. Let's turn that one off and zoom in a little bit on one of the lakes. We have a bathymetry layer. And if it doesn't come on fast enough, that's fine. We're going to not worry about it so much. But as we zoom out, we can turn on a definite layer. And we have a dams layer. So they can go and click on these. Okay, the pop-ups are up. I feel like I'm just having, I hotspotted my phone, but it seems to be that it disconnected during my presentation. So unfortunately, some of these ones that take a little bit more to load up are not going to come through and work properly for me today. But ideally, you can click on this point. It'll give you the information about that dam, who's the holder of that dam. We have other information in here on mining claims. They want to see what mining claims are in their areas, as well as you'll see here wildlife management, the wildlife values. We have all of that information stored within this tool. And these layers all come from, like I said, Government of Canada or Land Information Ontario, so the Ministry of Ontario. And we're just basically compiling them into a nice tool that's easily accessible for our communities to use. So I don't want to go too much into that. So we're going to head out of that tool. And I believe I got to bring you back to the presentation, and hopefully you can see that there and into the next slide. So I'm here to give you a little bit more talk of the critical cartography part and how we are using that and going into that kind of mapping approach. And I'm not going to define it for you today. We're just starting to use it, but I did want to get a description of what critical cartography was. And here, these geographers or cartographers have described it as critical cartography challenges academic cartography by linking geographic knowledge with power, and thus is political. So basically saying, we look at this kind of counter mapping in the approach that we're kind of taking here and what I share with you in the next few slides. And this refers to the efforts for us to map against this dominant power structure. So historical maps, that's where I thought it'd be best to start. And again, this is a lot of the work that comes from Alan, Heidi, and now we're going to be moving more into some of Josh's work that I haven't got to work on yet. So when I first started with this organization, I was lucky enough to meet Heidi Bohacker. It was actually pretty much the same time I got hired. It was at our treaty gathering in 2019, which was in Wekwemakong, which is on Manitoulin Island. So here I introduce you to her book, Dotem and Council Fire. It's available. Like I said, Heidi teaches out of the University of Toronto. and her book is on Anishinaabe governance through alliance. So this is the Dodaman Council Fire. Yeah, so if you can find it, I was lucky enough to get to put this map together for Heidi, and you can see we are just starting to compile a little bit of our names in here, like Bawading and Wasauksing, Minnejakoning, but there is so much more work to do when it comes to our places and our trails and our waterways. So we'll be working in the future with our historians to get some more of that mapping work done. Now here is probably the oldest map I'm going to take you to that we're working with and just newly starting to work with this map. When approached by Alan, and not approached, like we kind of bumped into each other and started working on some of this stuff. I was a little bit confused. I wasn't grabbing the sense, like, what am I doing? Like, you're giving me all these maps, and there were so many maps that were coming my way between him and Josh, and I wouldn't have really understood where to start. Now, Alan has just introduced this to me within the last month, and this is part of his cartographic cancellations, right? And how he sees it. So right here, we're looking at Louis Nicholas in 1671 had developed this map. And in this map, I'm not going to go over and say all these names for you, but Alan has shared with me that this is Anishinaabe-Moan names. And this is up near Nipigon over here. If you can see up in my, I think I'm circulating my cursor, so I hope you can see it. These again are our Ojibwe names, our Anishinaabe-Moan names. Again, over here over the Ottawa River in the Quebec area, there are more. He also mentions he can see them, and they're all represented here on the top of Lake Huron. So what it goes to show when he talks about this cartographic cancellations, here's a map in 1671. But when we get here, it's still another map in 1670 and 1671. This one comes from the Jesuits of New France. And already you can see that they took off the majority of all of those names. And there's not many names in this map for that to be said. And so I'm not going to go too much into detail about this. I did want to share it as this is kind of the base of the work that me and Alan will be taking on and moving forward with. And so I think it was important to share that and to share that cartographic cancellations to see that our names do not exist there anymore. And as the dominancy kind of comes into play, and when you think about that, and you look at the maps, there are no names there, and there are plenty of names on the map now. Maps are full of roads and street names and towns and cities. So yeah, no, we are looking forward to moving on this project. So leading me here, well, what maps do we work with, right? And then this is where I'm really have to work with the historians. They have worked with this research. They know what they're doing. They're going to provide the maps, and we're just going to keep on trying to tie this together and put it in a digital database set so we can spatially share this on application tools as well as printable maps. So what we want to do is we want to tell our sacred track. We want to map our ways. So one of the first things I started with Alan was here at the, this is a 1762. He gave me this map, and it's based on research he's done with this man, Robert Rogers, and the chiefs at the time. But I'm not going to go into detail. Alan's the researcher. He's the one that tells the stories. I am just going to let you know what we did with this map. So we had to take this map, and Alan was a little distorted at first because of the way you look at it in the top right corner or left corner is the representation looks like north, like the way it's written. He was almost thinking, well, north is this way, but he knew where the falls was, and it kind of shows here. It says the Falls of St. Mary. The rivers that are listed here, Namabino River and Muscatine Saukee River, those rivers are along this system, and those are what we digitized in this layer. So what we had to do is we have to take a map like this. We have to georeference it, is one of the GIS terms we use. When we georeference it, we then have to take it into in the software, and it's not going to be match up with the waterways. It's an old map, so it's very hard to stretch it and put it into that form. So what we go and do is called digitize. So digitize then takes it into the level where we can recreate this water. We can put our own labels and do our river systems as well, and add any other, there was some boundary information in here that we added some points for. So this is just kind of like the first step of going into that work when it comes to these historical maps. So now I want to take you to the original surveys. So the original surveys are based on There are 1850. They're our treaty, when our treaty was signed, and the surveys came in the 50s. So from 1851 to about 1853, these surveys were captured for most of the 17 communities. Out of the 21 communities that are in our Robinson Huron Treaty, there was 17 chiefs that signed. And so there are only 17 surveys, but 2 of them were missing because they couldn't get to the sites. I'm only going to share a couple with you today, but I did want to tell you about the whole Mica Bay incident a little bit and how it got to the treaty being signed and the discussions with the chief. As I see, it's important before we go into sharing the maps with you. So here I've as a map, this is a report of the Robinson Treaty of 1850. It's a case study by Jim Morrison. So this is available through a couple of resources online. I believe even the Government of Canada, I've seen it there. So mining company holdings on Mica Bay. So this just gives you an idea. Now this would be, say, going the farthest west of our communities. So this is up on Lake Superior. You're just on top of Sault Ste. Marie area. If you're familiar with Agawa and going up towards Wawa. And it just shares with you the mining company holdings that were going on in the area. And it even has dates here, you know, 1847, 1846, 1848. So this is what was happening. And this is what caused the whole treaty be signed, because there was a huge incident that took place at Mica Bay. The chiefs better explain this and some of the other researchers, but I'm just gonna let you know that there was kind of like the chiefs came in, and there were very few, but they made themselves look very large. And they approached at Mica Bay the mining companies and the holders, you know, that they were attacking them in a sense. So then the communications came and discussions led into the treaty being developed because of these mining holdings. So what I was talking about, discussions with the chiefs, and what I wanted to say about that before I went into the original surveys is that there was a very misconception, like the language totally misunderstood by our chiefs. I'm not going to read this word for word, but again, this comes out of the same case study that was done by Jim Morrison. And right here, it's basically saying like Chief Singwakos was wanting McDonald to represent them, right? And he said that you don't understand us, we don't understand you, but Mr. McDonald understands us, so let him speak for us. But you know, they wouldn't, well, that comes next. Like first, like Chief Singwasan says here, and I should repeat this part, is he says, I know nothing of the value of my lands. We thought of our ignorance and employed McDonald. We wish you to hear him. So they really want him to hear McDonald. But if you continue reading, you will notice that they walk out, they leave, and they don't listen to Mr. Alan McDonald for them. So the reason I wanted to share that is because it means that these original surveys that you see here that I'm going to share with you weren't even properly done to what the chiefs were agreeing on. This wasn't what they wanted to happen. So here I'm going to just share 3. First, I'm going to share Garden River. And Garden River survey right here is done in 1850. Well, it was probably done in 1851. I have a nice little black bar at the bottom of my screen here, sorry. Garden River is actually done more like 1852 or 1853 because it was number 14. It was one of the last ones. And I'm going to zoom into these maps, but what it shows here is our boundary, right? This is the land, and here's the lines that they were giving to us at that time. Point Grundine is one I'm going to share with you. This is part of Wikwemikong's unceded nation now. And here we are, Georgian Bay, just at the top of the Georgian Bay. And then this is just 4 of them together. So this is the French River into Lake Nipissing. So we have Nipissing First Nation, we have Dokis First Nation, there's Henvey Inlet, which was formerly known as French River at the time of the treaties. And then if you can see here, we have, again, another piece of Henvey Inlet. And they called them the shoeing reserves, and I guess are the First Nations because I guess they went together, right? And they flowed on the same water systems for sure. So zooming in here, I wanted to share with you in the map that I quickly showed you with the GIS portal we created, and I turned on the Canada Land Survey records that show you where our lands are at right now. It's even got more cut down from that big, huge map I showed you of Garden River. The whole bottom that went all the way down to Lake George is missing. They started to develop on these maps, and you can see like after the 1850s, they decided they were going to give a new boundary line. They were going to cut out a piece of land. Going into the details of how the lands were surrendered and how these things changed, I'm not going to do that today, but I'm just going to let you know that there were these many changes that were done throughout all the communities, and this is just an example of one right now. What I did want to share is that on these maps, there's share some information, right? And I'll go through them individually, but Indian Village, you'll see the boundary, it's a maple. It says maple, so like a maple tree was marked as the boundary lines here. So just to give you an idea of how these maps kind of came together, they were measured in chains, although there were a couple where I did see miles, but with the tools that I have with Esri and the GIS, I'm able to dimension that, measure things out, and shape this and get this georeference as best as I could. I kind of share how that georeferencing looks in this map. If we go back and you focus a little bit of what the water looks like here, and you know, the little bit showing none in between, and then we come back, you can see we're trying to stretch this and bring this in as best as we could before we start like getting these lines to the lengths they are and at the right spots. So there's a lot of work to be done compiling these historical maps and getting the information from them. So Point Grandine is which I spoke of next, and that was, like I said, up at the top of Georgian Bay, just near the French River. And the reason I pulled this one in a little bit more is I wanted to share, again, the points that we're grabbing off this map, why we're grabbing the information. So here even has maple tree, cedar post, pine tree, again, marking the boundaries, but it says Indian sugar bush. So we had a sugar bush here, and then it also has figures on the cliffs. So along this river, we know that there was pictographs. And then it shares where the mill and settlement was. Keating and Davies were part of the surveyors that were doing the work. So we'll still have to do a little bit of research to find out if this was, in fact, possibly an Indian village, or was it just a settlement for the colonization that was happening at that time. And then the last one I'm just going to share is, again, just to give you an example of what these layers, like these boundary lines look like and how they even shaped after time. So here you can see Nipissing, and then it draws a line coming across right under where it says Shobeshkish and Band. You can see that there's a line that comes basically across and then starts dropping it right at the Indian Village. So all of this was cut off in Nipissing. And those are just 3 of the communities that I shared with you. Now we're going to go on to a few tools. And so again, I think it's best that I'm going to bring you back to my web browser as I go through them one by one. So I'm going to leave some of my tools open in case we get discussion. So we're working on, like I said, place names, and this is Danakiwanon. And Danakiwanon, it means places. And so what we're trying to do is get our community and our people to go out and use this tool. It explains why we want to capture the Anishinaabe-Mowen name, and then they could supply us with the Anishinaabe-Mowen name. They can give us a description of the name, whether they need to tell a story. If it's a different, like a different dialect, they can write that in here. And then here's a map where they can go in, zoom in, put that point on the map where they're talking about. And yeah, we're really hoping people will start using this more and getting out to our communities. From that tool, I will go into sharing with you what the map looks like here. So this is like our quick tool. Like it's a little bit easier to use than the first survey I shared with you because we're using it more internally to get researched information on place names that are already out there. We still have a lot of work to do, but for example, the Great Lakes Fishery and Wildlife Commission had a great source for Anishinaabe-Moan names. So we went ahead to their site and started putting them in, obviously giving credit to them. And it's a really great tool because when you click on in here, you can see that Adikamakon ZB is Whitefish Bay, or Whitefish River. Whitefish Bay River, sorry, that got me. But the river is ZB, and that's what I wanted to get at, why I said that to you and tried to pronounce that name myself. Okay, so yeah, I don't want to go into too much. I'm just kind of giving you a big overview. I know we don't have a lot of time, and I have a few more other things that are more excellent to share with you than how we're trying to capture the place names. I have next to share with you Bawading and telling our story. We talked about Nadon Jabamumowen and us telling our story. So we got out there with Gima Sayers from Batchewana, and we got out and captured very significant points to him around Sault Ste. Marie, as their village was very close to Sault Ste. Marie. And you will see here in the map, because I can't go through all of these points, is that we have circles for where we stopped along the way. They're represented by a number, and we got up to number 8 or number 9. And each one, I'm going to bring you through what we created to go like as a guided tour. But you still have option to see that there's churches, and these were historical site plaques and stuff like that. We had to, we wanted to have the residential schools that were in the area as well on the map. But the meaning behind creating this was to tell our story. So to fixate on these red points right here that we're going to visit. There's a lot of background information in here, but when you scroll down and you get to the Bawading guided tour, you can see we go from point. There's a transcript that tells what he's saying in the video to the next point where he needs to share some very important information with us. And again, this continues along the whole journey he takes us on and telling us about their place in Sault Ste. Marie. So I want to quickly, because I do believe we have time, because I don't have too much more to share with you, is show you, we're going to go right to number 6. I think that's one of the better ones to share with you of what he has to share.
Anin Bojo, good afternoon, everybody. Good day, everybody. Chief Sayers, coming to you from downtown Bawading. Downtown Baoting is how we say it in our language. Taking you to these prominent places on this virtual tour is really interesting. Even for me, it really reminds me of the unique worldview that comes through our lens as the original peoples of these lands. And we're still here. We're still prominently represented in Sault Ste. Marie, in Baoting. We anticipate that we are upwards probably around 20,000 in the area, because there's a lot of transient population as well. So we do expect that those original agreements, the history is reflected in how we manage our relationship today with the newcomers to these lands. And behind me here is a plaque that recognizes this area, and we're not far from the International Bridge. We're not far from the old paper mill. We're not far from the rapids, but this is where the old Northwest Trading Company had their trading post. And it was in 1850 that they decided that they would have the signing of the treaty here in the trading post. So they moved all of the furs out, they moved everything out of the trading post, and we came in to have the discussions around the treaty. The treaty really allowed for the establishment of Sault Ste. Marie in 1850. Any other land assertions and acquisitions that were embarked on by the newcomers to our land were actually illegal. They couldn't register their lands, they couldn't get title to their lands because there was no treaty. All of the land acquisitions, including the mining interests in the area that were in place prior to 1850, were illegal. It was the leadership of Baoting, the leadership of Batchewana, that actually collectively stopped an illegal mine about an hour and a half north of here at Mica Bay, and that's what led to the treaty. Initially there was only one treaty, the Robinson Treaty, that was being proposed, but in order to legalize that Mica Bay mine, it evolved into 2 treaties, and 2 treaties that were signed a day after each other. First of all, signing off on a treaty with the Superior Treaty that allowed for the legalization of the Mica Bay mine, because there was some reluctance on the part of the leadership at the time to endorse and participate in a Robinson Treaty for the whole area, because there were certain compromises that we weren't going to make. Eventually, there was the subsequent Robinson-Huron Treaty that was also signed here. This is a really prominent area. You have to remember that treaties and international agreements, nation-to-nation relationship agreements like the one that was struck here in 1850 are really important to our nation. They are spiritual. They include our ancestors. They include all of creation in those agreements. This particular treaty is still revered today. It's still sacred to us. We still have ceremonies. We still annually commemorate this relationship that we've struck that opened up the Midwest, opened up this area that allowed for the establishment of Sault Ste. Marie as an example, and many other municipalities in the original treaty area. So this is a really important area, and I encourage you to acknowledge that when you're in the area. This is where the overall governance agreements between the Crown and the Indigenous people in the northern part of the Great Lakes was established. Pretty powerful area. So we'll see you at the next spot, okay?
Okay, I see I'm good here. Yeah, I know we don't have much time, and I think I'm gonna make it. So I have a couple more things to share with you. Like I said, I can't bring you through all of the details of what we're creating here today, but come to our website, reach out, send us an email. We are willing to meet up with any of you and share this information at another time that suits. So I talked about the youth journey. So talking treaties. So we sent out a couple of youth this summer, and they went out to visit people and visit the land. So visit the community, visit the land. So we had Gracie Mendaman and we had Isaiah Nielsen. And Gracie is from Point Grandine at Tikmashing, and then Isaiah Nelson is from Bawading. So they didn't get to do too much. Like I said, it was just a summer. This just shares some of the communities that they got to visit along the way. Again, we have the same kind of style going on with Batchewana here in this platform, this application to share our knowledge, and we're still updating this one. So this one is not even, if I go through it, it doesn't have all the information we want to add, but I just wanted to give you a quick little glimpse of how we're scrolling around, using mapping, going to locations, and sharing videos from our community. What I did want to do, and I'm going to use this one because it's already ready to go, and because I spoke of Point Grandine and I spoke of the one map that shared where the Indian sugar bush was, as well as the figures on the cliffs, I thought this would be a great location to share a little pictograph with you of that location. Now, Cheryl got the opportunity to go there. This is a quick little video of them going down the river, and it's a little bit below my, give me a second, see if I can start it. I don't think it'll let me start it, but I'll share the picture with you. And I think it's because I have this black bar and it's my troubleshooting. I should have probably removed it. But here's a glimpse of the pictographs that were there on that river, Beaverstone River, that you've seen in the Point Grandine map that I shared of the original survey with you earlier. We also have Agawa over here. We had Isaiah get to make it over there. He has a video, but we don't have time to share all of that with you. I will see if I need to go back to my PowerPoint really quick here. We went through the story. So talking treaty, I'm thinking I'm on my last 5 to 10 minutes tops. 5 minutes, hopefully. I see it's already 5:05. So the cartographic cancellations with Alan Corbière, and you know, this is said right from him, how our language ties us to our homeland in our sacred ways. So that's why I'm going to share with you a couple tools that we built for Alan's work. I'm not going to go through the stories. That is much of Alan's specialty and much of his research, but just so you know how important it is for us to understand these stories as they speak of our relationship with the land. And it's really going to help to see these for our communities to see all of these place names that are our stories on our maps. So yes, here are his tools. We'll just go back to my web browser. So I gave him 2 different platforms because this is new for us and working together. I created him one that looks a little bit more like our GIS portal platform. I called this one the web map application. And so Nana Boju Bapa Me Tu. So this is Nana Bojo left his sign of presence, left his tracks. And this just says Jada, which means let's go. So let's go and see. So like I said, Alan has stories that go to all these points. You'll see the flow of that in the next application a little bit better. But this one, it just goes to show how we're getting our name on the map. We still have a lot more information to update in here. I know if we zoom in, you know, he has more information as we get to some of the points. What we're able to do is we're able to get Anishinaabe to the suggested translation to the source translation. He's getting to put his stories that he's finding and all his source site information, everything in this tool, as well as he can click on his images and get into his images when he wants to present this story. So what this tool, the more reason behind this one for him is it's more usable for him and maybe not for him sharing so much, but if he wants to see some other layers with this tool, he can do that. He can bring up, he was really interested in knowing what the slope looked like or the elevations of the land. So he's able to do that. And like I said, it takes time for these tools to kind of work, and depending on your internet, a little bit slower, but it basically here is showing you the slope and the elevations. He has a terrain model. He can go into world imagery. Again, bringing up the Canadian land surveys. This is the same thing. It's just called Indigenous Lands of Canada, but it still comes from Narcan. It's still the Canada Land Survey records. And then I created him a nice editing tool. So what he can do, as long as he has the editing points available, he can now go in and he doesn't need me along the way to get his point down on the map and put the information. I can see some things loading down here, but basically what comes up once he gets his point on the map is this table, and he can put all of that information in himself, and then he could save it or delete it, or he can grab on it and he can move it if he got it in the wrong location. So it's more of a tool for Alan to help with his work as well. And then the other one to help, it's the same, it's still Nana Bojo Bamad Mito, and it's just this one I called it the attachment application because it's more of a presentation for him. So again, Jada, let's go in. When he goes in, he could now go to his first point of his story. He can still zoom in here. He has all the options to turn layers off and stuff as well, and he can see all his information in here. But what it does is it brings him from his stories, like it starts at point 1. So as he tells his story, it goes along the way. And you can see that he can get to there. There's attachments. He can flip to pictures and stuff. But it's a tool that we're creating for us to be able to share this knowledge and get this out and for his presentations as well. And I can't wait to add more to it. It just seems so small when you look at it. Even when you think of the place names tool that I shared with you, we still have so much information that needs to be added. So I do think I'm running out of time. I was going to go into a little bit more of how we're trying to find these places, but I think I'm going to leave it at that. If you have more questions, you can come and talk to us. And I'm definitely going to say a big thank you. So Chimigwech again. I have our website here. So if you didn't have access to it throughout the presentation, please jot it down. And it was great to be with you here today. Miigwech to Tim for setting it up.
Thanks for this, Nikki. That's wonderful. And I want to remind people that you can put your questions in the Q&A. I have the stuff that you shared with us is just so rich, and I suspect that you and I could talk about it for hours. But the idea is that other people should also ask their questions. So
sure.
the first question we have comes from Diane Campo. And she says the maps are really impressive work, but she said, do you know if other nations have similar tools and projects going on as well? So are you folks unique? And one of the things that we're well aware of in this series is that different communities are at very different stages, different nations are very different places when it comes to all of this. So, but anyways.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Cheryl's gonna get a chance to join. She was gonna try to join during the discussion, but I do kind of look and I see she's not here. And I think that yeah, like I don't know, it is very unique. I guess I should say that. That's what I at least hear from a lot of the people in our feedback. So when I'm done a presentation or I've been around, a lot of people don't say that they've seen much of this. The communities that I'm aware of, I don't think that there's many even in our 21 that we mentioned that are going to this extent with things within just their First Nation, right? We're kind of like an organization that's kind of housing it for all of them. But I do know that there is some work. I know far out west in Canada, in Vancouver, there's the Firelight Group, and they do a lot of work too. As far as actually seeing some of these applications being built with them, I haven't looked into it, but I am sure there is much work that will be coming out as the GIS is rolling out with a lot of new tools.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
I'm sure it does. You were going to talk about how you're going about refinding names basically, and one of the things that strikes me, and as you were presenting the early colonizing maps and the disappearance of basically the indigenous people's names and places and so forth. I'm a historian of British Columbia, and I've seen the same thing. If you look at Victoria, Fort Victoria was what becomes Victoria. Fort Victoria was established in 1848. By 1853, they have a map that of the area which does not have a single indigenous name in it. It's all like English names. So part of the process of colonization is this renaming, right? So
Yeah.
how are you going about this? I mean, you talked about getting people from the communities to put their stuff up and so forth, but do you want to talk a bit more about rediscovering and renaming? Well, not renaming, but putting the original names back.
The original names back. That's exactly what we want to do, is put the original names back. And when I was sharing the original surveys, I did forget to go to some of the lakes, because even in those original surveys from the 1850s, there's some lake names in there that they're not called right now either. So we will be putting those on the maps. What we were really hoping to do, and we all know that we're in a hard place here and we can't even be there today to present to you in a nice auditorium or something, and we have to be so far. So a lot of these tools that we really wanted to go out and engage our communities with, and we haven't been able to do. For example, you probably know about our little NHL that runs yearly. This was a place that we wanted to go to see our community, have a booth set up, and instead of asking them to use it on their own, we would have been there with them and getting those Anishinaabe names in there using our survey tools. We wanted to be out at, TAG, which is another Anishinaabe-Moan conference that they have on the other side in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, but we weren't able to join these events to use our tools that way. So we were trying as best as we could to get the research from our historians. Like I said, we were able to put some place names in just by using some sources that we felt were valid enough for that. And we'll continue to do that process as we're working, but we're just going to have to keep on continue working with our communities. And even if we're doing it virtually online like this, hopefully reaching out to them to get more of them to put that information in, the elders especially that know the language still.
Okay.
We will, I should say what's going to happen along the way is we're going to get, one mountain or one lake, and it's going to maybe have 5 different names. So this is going to be part of our collection as well, as to see that, and then the historians will have a little bit more to look at, and we'll have to figure out how those place names should be back on the map, I guess I should say too.
Sure. It's not just an easy thing to just sort of find the name and just put it back. It's an ongoing challenge.
Mhm.
Do you know, are you aware if there's sort of any uptake on that kind of renaming project from the dominant community in your area?
Like you mean like, are they participating? Do they want it to happen? Are they?
I realize there's a range of opinion, but I mean, are there
Yeah.
people who are also working to like rename their town or their lake or whatever, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. Batchawana is all on it. I'm close with Batchawana because I live here, like, and they're already labeling, especially in their community, all of their streets and stuff. But they have, I've seen their signs out in Sault Ste. Marie now, you know, acknowledging that they're in Batchawana's community and on the treaty
yeah.
lands and stuff like that. We also have a billboard project. I don't know. I think I could talk about it a little bit, where we want to get, you know, signs out on the land that share, like, you're here with us. We're Robinson Huron Treaty, right? You know, so I'm not sure how that's going to look yet, but just to give you an idea, we are working on things like that, even with MTO, and getting some of that signage back in there. Yeah.
And getting signs up in Anishinaabe as well, I would
Mhm.
imagine.
Mhm.
Right. One of the things that I love about what you're doing is how so much of what you're doing is accessible online.
Mhm.
And one of the complaints that we hear from teachers at all levels is that they're, you know, how do you get materials? And it's sometimes we say you have to look in the right places and then start asking. And I noticed Cheryl talked about you know, one of the educational resources that you folks have put out as well. But do you have any sense of how and this may not be your particular brief, but how teachers or schools in your area or even outside are building on the stuff that you do to bring it into their curriculum?
I think I could talk at least a little bit. Cheryl would have been the person to be here for this, but they're already working on a curriculum approach to how this could be shared at the educational level with students. I mean, the treaty tracks was an example of their first step to it, right? And they got that treaty track booklet created about almost a year and a half ago and got that sent out to a lot of the school boards around us. Like, I know it went out to Algoma. I even got to talk to one of the children at our school nearby, and I found out it got into their hands. So it was even great to know that it went out to a public school here and it was in the hands of the children. And so with Cheryl and what she's working on with other team members, they are going into that, and the best approach to that curriculum and to allowing access for teachers, like you just said, to this educational material coming from us, from our Robinson Huron Wabandemogowan organization, right, and what we're delivering. And then I do know, like, Alan, like, he's excited about, like, he was pretty pumped about the tools that I made for him, if you're familiar with Alan Corbier.
Yeah.
And he's all for this. He's just like, he can't wait to get that out as an educational resource. So it's just a matter of making sure he fine tunes it and doesn't get any of what you would say, like, an opposition to like anything that's going to happen. He has to make sure, right? Everything is going
Sure.
to flow good from him.
Sure. No, I do know Alan Corbier, and in fact, it's through Alan that he put me in contact with you folks. So, and he had previously presented in our series, and has been doing this wonderful work in so many different levels for years, as you know.
Yeah. He's going to be my Hippocrates. I'm going to be his Aristotle.
I have a kind of it could be just a stupid question, but it's something that struck me when you were looking at like those earlier maps, and you know, they would have an Indian village, and then they would have, like, you know, 10 houses, but they'd be in like a geometric shape, like, you know, there were like two rows of 4 dots and then two other ones. Do you have a sense if this was some attempt to represent the actual location of the buildings, or was them just like filling in dots to make it look that? I mean, because to me this sort of speaks to, you know, what we see this as kind of a representation of reality, but in fact it is an exercise in power that's remaking things. So I don't know if you have any sense of that.
Yeah, no, that one's, I guess, a little bit tricky for sure. I don't know, we might have to consider waiting and seeing what happens before we can answer that kind of thing to know,
Sure.
like, I mean, I think working with Josh, Manitowoc as well, you know, even him and Alan, you know, their stories are going to kind of overlap and like come together and not in places. So, I mean, it's waiting to see what we bring into this data set, into what we're collecting, and then really to know what they make sense of that. Like, was that really a village, or was it a settlement, and how much of a community? And when they say that, was it the village just really only right there? Like, I mean, was the village not spread to different points within
Sure.
that area? So
Sure.
a lot of work to be done. We're starting a big job, I think.
Oh, it's a really exciting job, I think.
It
And
is.
I think also, you know, in speaking to the whole issue of sort of critical mapping, which is against sort of dominant forms of power, but it's fundamentally about uh, as I think as Cheryl was showing the continuity of use and presence
Mhm.
and ongoing realities of your people's use of this territory. And one of the things that I learned some time ago was that one of the key issues when it comes to Indigenous peoples and understanding them is exactly their long-term connection to territory and to land. So it's a marvelous way of sort of making that real. I don't know, I'm going to give people one more chance to see if they have any questions. Somebody just put something in the thing here. Let me click on it if I can find it. Why it's not coming up? Huh. That's terrible that I'm not seeing this question. So maybe somebody else
Are
can.
there any issues in using Western science technology like GIS to represent Indigenous understanding of lands and maps? I hope I asked this for well. Yeah, and
That's a
there
great question.
it is a great question. And of course, there's issues. And like I said, you know, there's no way we're going to have a GIS portal that's going to be public accessible, that's going to share that information that Cheryl shared with you that they collect in the use and occupancy study. You know, this is where people are hunting. This is where they're using their lands and collecting their medicine. This is being done for our people, you know, and for our representation, like Tim said, like to show like we've been using this land for a very long time, but not necessarily are we going to be making that public in the hands of other people. So I do think that they're enjoying the approach of GIS and using a Western technology. We understand that we're not going to get away from Western technology. There's no way we could do this kind of work without being involved with that kind of stuff. And GIS is a great tool to share that. And the software that we're using with the Esri, I feel pretty confident that what we do is well secured when we need it to be.
Okay, so yes, so so it's always, but this is also comes into the critical cartography part, right? It's about using these tools carefully.
Exactly. And that's why we
Uh,
have to build them to that capability, right? And some of these tools that I shared today, like the one about wadding of our story with Gimma Sayers, that one's available. The youth journey's not, and Alan's stuff is not yet because it still needs to be
Sure,
done
sure.
right.
If I think there's another question or comment in the Q&A, which again, for some reason I can't see. So I apologize to the people who are doing that. And can you see it? Is there one?
Yeah, and I think it's more, I'll read it out for you. I do think it's more of a comment. What a compelling presentation. Thank you so, so much. I was in my 50s when I learned that land I grew up on was the land of the Bay, Miwok. All of the indigenous names have been replaced with colonial names, and I agree. Yes, they have.
Well,
Thank you for your comment.
maybe that's a wonderful comment that we should end on. That this whole thing is an ongoing process of learning for all of us, and I think there is so much to learn, and it's so exciting to see the ways in which this is coming into effect. So it turns to me now to actually thank the people who made today possible. I wanted to thank a number of people who are not here, but I should mention, as I said earlier, that it was thanks to Al Corbier that we actually had this presentation today, and I've always enjoyed collaborating with Al on some different aspects of raising historical troublemaking. And it's just so wonderful that you were able to be here as a result. I also wanted to thank the people who helped us in terms of organizing this session and getting the funding for this. I wanted to thank Marlene Hoff from the Faculty of Education, who helped us, did a lot of work in putting together all the important things that made the SSHRC grant possible, that is funding this series. I want to thank Christine Cusack from the marketing department, and as well as Greta Nkangu from our marketing department, the Faculty of Ed, for their work in helping to publicize this. I want to thank Kellyanne Maddox, who from the Faculty of Arts is Marlene's equivalent and also helped with funding. Elisa Ferrer-Burgess from the Institute of Indigenous Research and Studies, who is helping with our many of the details and the funding, putting funding and so forth out, as well as Andrew Kadzu from the Faculty of Education. I should thank our technician, Andrew Kadzu, sorry, from, I meant to say Vincent Gauthier from the Faculty of Ed. Andrew Kadzu, our technician, for making this all seem to work seamlessly. I also need to thank my colleague, Brenda McDougall from the Institute of Indigenous Research and Studies, who has been one of our strongest supporters in this series, as well as my colleagues, Nicholas Ningafuk from the Faculty of Ed, and Deanne LeMay, who from the CEGEP de l'Outaouais, who are co-investigators for this project and who help to keep me straight in what I'm doing. Melissa Daou, our assistant, who keeps all the different wheels going, and Natalie Resch, who is our translator, for doing such a marvelous job of keeping this up. Most of all, I need to thank Cheryl, and I need to thank Nikki. So if you can pass this on to Cheryl for us. The work you're doing is, I think, really wonderful, and underlines the importance of both sort of historical understanding and historical knowledge, but that is controlled by people from their own perspectives, from their own points of view, and ways of taking that knowledge and mobilizing it and putting it out into the world in order to actually assist people in the present take control over their territories, over their resources, and over their destinies. And again, doing this with such wonderful things. I wanted to thank Nikki and Cheryl for sharing your wisdom with us today. And just to say thank you so much, Miigwech.
Wedge,
So,
thank you all.
thank you.
Which, thank you, Nikki.
Okay. And just a final reminder, our next session is on the 16th, and we look forward to seeing people there. So take care. Miigwech.